another art fundamentals discussion. This time talking about pop art, minimalism, and photorealism. Okay. I'm not gonna go through all the different genres. If you need to do that, go to a previous video. I just kind of want to get into this. And so in the 1960s, we see the creation of pop art as kind of a major art style. And one of the key things about pop art, right, the idea of popular art, right, is that it incorporates images from mass culture. Incorporation of images from mass culture. So kind of the things that everybody knows about, right, are utilized in pop art to maybe subvert ideas or enhance them, right? But one of the things is that this is a real big violation of the unspoken rules about art, right? Which we've seen previously in like Impressionism and stuff like that. What the appropriate subject matter is, right? Even though we've seen, abstract expressionism basically reject the idea of subject matter, right? What appropriate subject matter is for art, right? And the obvious main guy here is going to be Andy Warhol, who lived from 1928 to 1987. He is the icon of pop art, right? He was a rock star, right? Right. He is an icon of art in the 20th century. And they talk about some of his different images that he used, right? Soup cans, Brillo boxes, which I forgot to look up what Brillo boxes are, showing my age. And then images of movie stars, right, which we'll see here in a second. And then on top of that, he created a factory-like silkscreen approach, right? He pretty much had a factory that helped mass produce these, right, in silkscreen printing. Silkscreen printing, which was pretty much used to mock the art world as it was, right? The kind of the individuality or the uniqueness of each art piece, right? He's certainly mocking there. Here is a very terrible artifacted image of his pictures of Marilyn Monroe, right? And then here is his soup can, right? The Campbell's tomato soup can, which was very much like just a iconographic type of image already, right? It's such a very clear, object, right? In terms of like its branding, right? It's so, it was so pervasive, right? And so he used that to kind of create art. Another key figure is Roy Lichtenstein. The different, it's funny how the different major artists of the era of pop art have names based on locations. He adopts the imagery of comic books in his art. In fact, it really just looks like comic book templates, right? Comic books and recreated them on a large scale. Right. And what he uses is the pattern of dots used to print them is very obvious. Pattern of dots made massive, right? The kind of stippling style. It's not quite stippling, but it's kind of got the same idea. Let's take a look at one of his. Right. Again, you can kind of see just the dots, right, that you would typically see in comics, right? This looks like a comic, right? So that's Roy Lichtenstein's style. Okay. And then the last one to talk about here is Robert Indiana. I feel like these are pseudonyms. These can't be their real names, right? Robert Indiana cannot be his real name. Oops. Let's say he lives from 1928 until very recently, 2018, he passed. And he used stencils that were kind of discarded from, commercial signs, right? Like stop signs and stuff. Sorry, not stop signs, more like signs for advertising, to create his own artistic messages. His most famous being, of course, the love sign, which is now also a sculpture, right? So that's what he's most known for, right? And so we kind of have I don't know if it's necessarily a reaction to it, but we also see the rise of minimalism. Right, so minimalism reduces art to its barest essentials. Okay, and it emphasizes the simplification of form. Right, the simplification of form, very like geometric in a lot of ways, and then also the monochromatic palettes. Right, so sometimes just one color. Right. And then we also see the invention of acrylic paints and the airbrush allow for minimalists to create very precise outlines, which leads to the term used for this is hard edge painting. Right, creating hard edges in your paintings. Right. And so the artists that they bring up here are going to be Frank Stella, David Smith, and Dan Flavin, who you might actually recall from the 1960s art resource. So Frank Stella, born in 1936, still kicking it today. David Smith from 1906 to 1965. Ugh. 65, and Dan Flavin from 1933 to 1996. Okay. And he's best known for his entirely non-objective paintings. Right, again, non-objective meaning there's no object in the painting, very sort of abstract in that sense. David Stella uses stainless steel sculptures. And Dan Flavin, who is most well known for his neon tubing artworks. Okay, let's take a look at some of those. Okay, here is a Frank Stella painting. Again, the hard edge painting, very clear and obvious here, right? And then we see here is a sculpture by David Smith, known as Australia. I don't know why it's called Australia. Maybe it has some sort of shape akin to it. But yeah, again, very minimalist, just very much just the use of basically, hard edges in that same kind of way, right? Not a whole lot of non-angular art here. And then Dan Flavin here with this new neon tubing, which shout out to my hometown again. This is in the Manil collection in my hometown of Houston. Which, if you don't know anything, actually, Houston has a pretty good art scene, or at least art patrons. Very good museums here. All right. In fact, this is right down the road from me. I've walked here before, so that's super cool. Okay. And the last one is a group of pop art inspired group. Pop inspired artists produce works that create a sense of super realism. And that genre has now become known to be called photorealism. Okay. In photorealism, we get a hyper-real quality. We have subject matter and sharp focus. Right. As in a photograph, right? So similar to a photograph. And it really contrasts with the sfumato techniques of the Renaissance, right? That we saw with Da Vinci, right? The kind of smoky, hazy, atmospheric technique, right? That we've seen for quite a while in painting and stuff like that. And so the artists that they bring out here are Chuck Close and Duane Hanson. Chuck Close, being born in 1940, still alive today, and Duane Hanson, being born in 1925 and living until 1996. Right. Chuck Close creates portraits, and Duane Hanson creates sculptures of ordinary people. right? And they talk about them both harkening back to the first kind of realist group led by Gustave Courbet. Harkens back to the realism of Gustave Courbet, who, if you recall, made the Stonebreakers. Okay, let's take a look at those. Here is a portrait by Chuck Close. I mean, I get the photorealism, but also, like, just the different shapes doesn't make me feel this, but he, is obviously considered a photorealist. But Duane Hanson, that is a sculpture. That is wild. That is insane. Yeah, but like an ordinary person, right, kind of hanging out, right, ordinary people sculptures, these are just unbelievable. They're fascinating. They look like real people. It's magic. It's crazy. But that is it for pop art minimalism and photorealism. In the next final video of the Western arts, we will go into earthwork, installation, and performance arts. But until that, I will see you in the